Now, the driveway was smooth and newly paved. The porch railings repainted in a stark white that felt impersonal. The welcome mat bore a cheeky slogan, "Home is where the wine is." The hydrangeas were gone, uprooted and replaced with 2 sterile pots holding artificial topiaries to perfect. Too lifeless to be real, I pulled up to the curb, my heart crawling up into my throat like a trapped animal. The engine ticked as it cooled, a small sound in the vast quiet. I shut it off, but sat there a moment longer, eyes fixed on the house I used to belong to. Lights glowed from within living room, kitchen, dining room. Shadows moved through the windows, figures walking, talking, living. They were home. I reached for the door handle, my body resisting every inch of the motion. Everything hurt more after the drive, the dull surgical pull in my side, the tight ache in my thighs from sitting too long. Still, I stood. I grabbed my bag from the passenger seat, wrapped my coat tighter around me against the chill, and climbed the steps slowly. One hand on the railing for support, one foot carefully placed after the other, breathing shallow to avoid aggravating the incision. I reached the door, my familiar door, with its chipped paint and brass knocker that Thomas had installed years ago. I pulled out my key, slid it into the lock. It didn't turn. I blinked in confusion, pulled it out, tried again. Still nothing. I stared at it. This key I'd had longer than I'd had gray hair. The one that had worked flawlessly last week. Then I noticed it. A new lock, shinier, thicker, brassy, and untouched by time's wear. They had changed it. My lips parted, but no sound emerged. A wave of disbelief washed over me, followed by a cold clarity. I reached out and knocked 3 times, not loud, just enough to be heard over the drizzle. The sound felt small, insignificant. No answer. I knocked again, more insistently. Nothing. A shadow shifted behind the curtain. A flicker of movement on the staircase inside. "Grayson," I called, just above a whisper. "It's me." No response, no footsteps approaching. Then a voice from above, bells, carrying from the second-floor window, sharp and clear through the glass. "You're not supposed to be here, Delilah. You should have stayed in the hospital, or better yet, found yourself a retirement home where they hand out Jell-O and call you sweetheart." I froze, my hand still resting on the doorframe, the rain now soaking my collar, threading its way down my back like cold fingers tracing betrayal. She kept going, her words slicing through the night. "Honestly, this house smells better without you in it. Less mothballs and martyrdom." A laugh followed, not kind, not amused, just mean-spirited, echoing in my ears. I turned back to the door and knocked once more, louder this time, the effort stinging my side like a fresh wound. "Grayson," I said. "Grayson." A long pause, then movement. I saw him at the bottom of the stairs inside, just for a second, his silhouette, his gait, things I knew as intimately as my own heartbeat. He walked across the hall, stopped by the front door. He was right there. All he had to do was reach out, turn the knob, say my name, acknowledge me. I held my breath, hope flickering like a dying candle. He turned away, walked back into the shadows, vanished without a word. The porch light clicked off, leaving me in total darkness. I stood there for another minute, watching the dark window, hoping stupidly that maybe he'd change his mind. That the boy who used to hold my hand in the grocery store, who cried when I left for work, would resurface. Maybe. No. The rain continued its assault, soaking me through. I stepped down, each foot heavy as lead, the wet concrete like ice under my soles. I walked back to the car, my coat clinging to me like layers of regret. I didn't cry, not yet. I just sat behind the wheel and stared at the house, their house now. They'd done it. They'd erased me from their lives. I backed out of the driveway, headlights sweeping across the front steps where I had once stood with Thomas. taking family photos on sunny afternoons, waving to neighbors with Grayson balanced on my hip. No one waved now. I drove past Eloise's house, her curtains drawn tightly, porch light off. I thought about stopping, knocking on her door, seeking solace in an old friend's arms. But something in me had shut down. A switch flipped to survival mode. I didn't want comfort. I wanted clarity, the sharp edge of truth to cut through the fog of denial. The road wound out of the neighborhood and led me to the edge of town, where the motel sign flickered faintly in the rain, vacancy blinking like a dying heartbeat, inviting the weary and the unwanted. I pulled in, the gravel crunching under tires. The girl at the front desk didn't ask my name, didn't inquire about my sodden state. I paid in cash, crisp bills from my purse. She slid me a key card and pointed down the dimly lit hall. Room 212. I closed the door behind me and locked it twice, the clicks resounding like finality. The air smelled faintly of mildew and cheap air freshener that had long since given up the fight. The bedspread was coarse under my fingers, the carpet thin and worn, but it was mine for now, a temporary refuge. I peeled off my wet clothes, shivering as the cold clung to my skin like a second betrayal, amplifying the ache from surgery. I changed into the hospital-issued sweater, still carrying the faint scent of antiseptic, a reminder of vulnerability. I sat on the edge of the bed, tried to recall the last time Grayson had hugged me, his arms tight around my waist, his head buried in my shoulder. I could not. The last time Belle had smiled at me without venom lurking behind her eyes. I could not. The last time that house, my house, had felt like it needed me, it had been years. And now it didn't even recognize me as its own. I sat there a long time, no television flickering, no light except the dim glow from the cracked lampshade casting long shadows on the walls. I whispered, barely audible. They changed the locks. And then, after a long pause, long enough for the hurt to settle into something sharper, more resolute, I said, "So I will change everything else." There is a particular kind of silence that settles over you when you realize your own child has rewritten the story of who you are, casting you as the villain in their narrative of convenience. That night in the motel, wrapped in a scratchy polyester blanket with the TV off and the rain still ticking against the window like a metronome set to despair, I did not sleep. Instead, I remembered, not because I wanted to relive the past, but because silence always invites memory, and memory, especially the kind buried deep to survive decades of quiet endurance, does not knock before entering. It floods in, unbidden and unrelenting. I remembered who I used to be, who I still was beneath the layers of grief and dust that time had accumulated. Before I was a mother, I was a maker, a woman with hands that knew fabric like a second language, discerning French silk from Italian chiffon with eyes closed. I had run my own tailor shop in Boston for over 30 years. Delilah's Dressings, nestled on Tremont Street between a flower shop bursting with vibrant blooms and a bookstore that smelled eternally of pipe smoke and hidden secrets. I stitched wedding gowns for 3 generations of one family, their joy woven into every seam. I hemmed opera capes, crafted theater costumes that brought characters to life on stage, sewed christening robes soft as whispers, and tailored prom dresses that made young girls feel like queens. People came to me for the moments they would cherish forever: births, unions, milestones, and I wove their stories into cloth. And I remembered Thomas. My Thomas, a high school literature teacher who smelled of peppermint and fresh woods, who read sonnets to me in the bathtub by candlelight, his voice wrapping around the words like velvet. He proposed with a thimble instead of a ring, knowing I'd wear it more often in my work, a practical token of his love. We built a quiet life together, one of shared books and laughter, of small adventures in the city parks and cozy evenings by the fire. We built Grayson, our son, who arrived like a gift we hadn't known we needed. Thomas had a voice that carried calm even when the world tilted on its axis. When he got sick cancer, relentless and unforgiving, he still read to me, still made me laugh through the pain. Just before he died, he held my hand in that hospital bed, his grip weak but his eyes fierce, and said, "Delilah, keep the land in your name. If something ever happens, protect yourself." People change, even the ones we love most. I didn't argue with him. I never did when he spoke with that quiet authority. After he was gone, I honored his wishes. We had bought that property in Maine together, a fixer-upper house with land that stretched out like open arms, promising peace and possibility. After Thomas's death, I sold the shop in Boston, packed my life into boxes, and moved back to Maine. Grayson was already there with Belle, and I thought naively, perhaps that we could begin again, rebuild as a family. I brought the deed with me, kept it in a small lockbox at the bottom of my hope chest, not because I was plotting or distrustful, but because my husband had asked me to. It was a safeguard, a quiet assurance. Grayson didn't take it well. At first, it was subtle passive comments at dinner about not being treated like full family. Questions disguised as jokes. "You still think I'm that teenager who stole $20 from your purse?" And then, slowly, the jokes ceased being humorous, morphing into accusations. One morning, we sat at the kitchen table. I had made coffee, offered him the cream with a smile. He looked at me, eyes cold, and said,